So hey everyone, my name's Tim. I'm the creative director of a company called Runaway, based down in Dunedin, New Zealand. And today I'm going to talk to you guys about limited time events, specifically in free-to-play games on mobile. So as free-to-play designers, we're no longer making static products. This is old news to you all, I'm sure, but long gone are the days where we made a game, went through crunch, put it on a gold master into a box, and then it went into a shelf, and then we moved on to the next thing. Instead, we're creating experiences which evolve along with their communities, that evolve along with the brands of their studios, and that engage people for years. And keeping up with all that content and keeping people engaged is a real Herculean task. So as the cost of acquiring an install, whether you're paying for marketing or whether you're relying on organic or social marketing, increases dramatically, it's even more important for us to maximize the lifetime value of the users. So the length of time we're holding on to players and the percentage of those players that we're actually converting into monetizing customers. And so this talk is all going to be about arguing that events, or the psychology and theory around events, is the key to engaging and monetizing players within a free-to-play model, whether it be on mobile or any other platform. This isn't a mechanic that's reserved just for hardcore games, but I'm going to show you two case studies here today of our casual games, Flutter and Splash, that have adapted the event mechanics from traditionally very core titles that came from Japan and made them work for a casual Western audience. Just before I get into my background, can I ask how many people in the room are free-to-play designers or working on free-to-play products at the moment? Cool, so a good portion of you. So stop me if I just ramble on some sort of like acronyms and things and stuff goes over your head. Happy to explain stuff, but and the rest, so if you're designers, the other guys are looking at premium or have been premium developers, looking to get into free-to-play? Yeah. Programmers? Yeah, cool, okay, sweet. So a little bit of my background. As I said before, I'm the director at Runaway in Dunedin. We make games inspired by nature. So we've been around for 7 years now. The first 3 years of our existence, we were doing fee-for-service work for the likes of National Geographic. We actually came out of a documentary filmmaking company. The whole thesis of our company was that if you could make a business out of telling stories about the natural world through television, then surely you could do it through games as well. That niche of creating game experiences which differentiated themselves by having a genuine connection to the natural world was something you could build a business around. So after working on mostly contract work for 3 years, we discovered that there wasn't a great path to growth, just doing fee-for-service. And we also understood that the likes of the channels like National Geographic and Discovery Channel didn't really know how to wield their brand on mobile yet to attract installs and grow a meaningful business. So we then partnered with a publisher called DNA, and that's when we released Flutter, which was just about to have its 4th birthday now. And since then, we've been expanding that series of games. So I've been the lead on Flutter, Splash, and Starlight, the 3 games you're going to hear about today, over the last 4 years. And over my time with Runaway, we've worked with brands like the World Wildlife Fund, National Geographic Channel, and as I just said, DNA. So this talk specifically is going to cover what are events, for a start, just the basics. Then we're going to take a step back and ask why they actually work. What's the psychology around the effectiveness of events? And then we're going to look at 2 casual case studies of how we've implemented them in our games. So what's an event? Well, like most good free-to-play mechanics, events came from the East. So they've been well established in Japanese mobile product well before they ever came to the West. But the basics are that they happen for a limited time, so let's say call it a week, and they feature a set of exclusive content. And this is the really important thing a lot of people miss right out of the gate, is that the content within these events needs to be restricted to only being able to be earned during that time period. Quite frequently, they have a specific theme or a narrative wrapped around them, so a story that the content tells as well. And sometimes those stories are linked into real-world events, like the Halloween event here with the Transformers Legends game. Traditionally in the Japanese products, or like the hardcore or mid-core titles, there's a very high cadence of events. So they'll go for, say, a week, and there'll be an event every single week. So they'll roll over the events starting on Monday, and then say if it's a set of cards or a set of characters that someone has to collect in a card battle game, then they have to get them all by Sunday, or the chance is over. So when we first started working with DNA, we had a lot of these case studies from more core titles to draw upon and talk to them about. What we ended up doing is taking some of the basics of those and adapting them to our more casual game, Flutter. So how impactful have events been for our game specifically? Vary. These are all of the, this is the last 6 months, or a 6-month window, I should say, of Flutter's up-down performance. And all those peaks are the end of events. And so, as you can see, if it weren't for events, we would have a very different business health outlook. That's a bit like, I think it sells the story pretty well, but this sells it even better. This is a split between the revenue contribution of purchases that are made by our customers for items that are in the base game, so no time limit, versus items that are exclusive to events. And so essentially the success and growth of our business is can solely be attributed to events. So why do they work? First and foremost, events present a clear short-term goal. So as I was saying at the start, we're now creating these games and experiences which grow over the course of months. We have many players in Flutter that have been playing the game now for over 3.5 years. And so that's a really, really long time to be working through just core content. What events do is they give the player, whether it's a week or a couple of weeks, a short-term goal to work towards to get a satisfying sense of completion. They also really help with making the game world feel alive, like it's always changing. So if the player feels like that they can just step away from the game at any time and just come back to it any time on their schedule, and it'll just be okay, there's absolutely no time pressure. Obviously that removes the urgency that drives monetization, but it also feels like the world doesn't really need you to come back. It's not operating on its own timeline. And most importantly, events drive this sense of artificial scarcity in the world. If a species is only available to collect for a week, or a character is only available to collect for a week or attain, then there's that feeling that it's very special and that you don't want to miss out. And of course that leads to the most important aspect of this entire thing, which is the sense of FOMO. So if people are part of a game experience, part of a community, and collecting creatures and expanding the environments in a brand and a portfolio that they really love, this sense is very, very real. This ever-changing set of content and events can really help make it feel that the world is alive and that the player should be logging in all the time, which is going to significantly drive your retention. Now, there's a game that's probably my favorite or most eye-opening game of the last year or two that illustrates, I think, the sense of the world being alive better than any else. And it's actually not something which you would traditionally look at as being a good example of a traditional event, but I want to point it out because it's, I think, a good example of how event psychology can be used to convince your players that the game world that you're creating is really alive. So this is a game called Neko Atsume. If you haven't played it, you absolutely should, because it's ridiculously cute, but also an amazing case study, and I think great game design. So this is a game about being a cat lady, or this is how it was sold to me anyway, by my friend who introduced me to it. What you do is you have, this is your backyard, and you can decorate your backyard with things like a ball of twine and a mat and a little cushy chair and put food out and things, and you're trying to attract the neighborhood cats. And once you load up the game for the first time and then arrange these things around your backyard, the game does a really brave, ridiculous thing. It tells you to go away. Right? As part of its tutorial, it essentially says, you're done now, come back later, and maybe you'll be lucky enough to see some cats visit you. And when I first saw this, I was like, oh my God, this breaks every single rule in the free-to-play rule book. The one-day retention rate is all predicated on the fact that you teach the player enough about the game that they'll be hooked, that they'll have enough investment in the game that they'll remember it and they'll come back to it and they'll remember how to play it. And this game is like asking you to put out a ball of twine and then saying, nah, I'm good, leave. But it resonated so well and matched perfectly with the theme of the game, which is like cats are ridiculous and unpredictable and things. And that's what being a cat owner is about, right? It's like trying to work your life around these ridiculous, unpredictable things that sort of seem to look down on you. And so what it does a really great job of convincing the player of is that these cats exist without your help. That something is going on in this mystical online world, ever changing, and that if you don't jump back in and capture that little moment where you're going to see that cat, then you might miss it and you might get that fear of missing out. So it gives this wonderful sense of mystery and scarcity, that this place is really special and there's lots of intricacies of it to learn over time. So what this all comes down to is what your backyard looks like, by the way, after you've decorated it with some more crazy stuff and the seasons change and all sorts of stuff. Anyway, play it, it's great. What this all comes down to is the war on attention and cementing a game in your player's mind as high up the pecking order as possible. When you look at your home screen, what is the most pressing place that you need to be spending your time and attention? Because in any player's home screen or any player's device, there's this virtual pecking order. So you've got to understand how important is it to log into my game and see what's happening with my world versus checking my Facebook feed or sending a message to somebody on Snapchat or playing one of my other competitors' games. So we're out to win all the little idle moments that a player has in their day. Cool. Okay, so those are the basics. Now we're going to look specifically at Flutter and how we implemented events in this game. Flutter is a game about collecting butterflies, real-world butterfly species from all around the globe. The wing patterns are factually correct. You learn a little fact about each of the species as you discover them. You raise them through their life cycle. They start off as an egg, they hatch into a caterpillar, then emerge as a butterfly. You can meet various other creatures like this kingfisher bird and poison dart frog. You get different quests to help the rainforest grow. You expand your environment, decorate it. The audience is 80% female, 20% male, 18 to 35-year-old primary demographic. 70% of our audience are in the US. The game's been out for nearly 4 years now. It's just about to pass its 4 millionth download. And it has probably its strongest characteristic. It has really good long-term retention. So it's 1 day, 7 day, and 30 day, 50%, 27%, and 14%. So, and beyond 14%, it doesn't really tail off much as well. It does a very, very good job at holding on to people for a long time. As I said, many people have been playing the game for over 3 years now. So the way that we implemented events in Flutter is that we have, instead of the basic 7 day from those card battle games I was talking about before, our events go for 13 days, and we have 1 event per month. So we spend 50% of the game's time in event, and I'll get into that event cadence and the specifics of that in a second. This is the core loop in Flutter. You start off by attracting an egg, so that's like a gacha roll, which I'll explain a bit more in a second as well. But there's a random chance as to what egg it's going to be you attract into the environment. Then there's some time that you wait for that egg to hatch, hatches into a caterpillar, you feed the caterpillar, there's some time, you wait until it transforms into a chrysalis, then a butterfly. Once it becomes a butterfly, it becomes an asset to you, which generates soft currency, or coins, honeydew, and also produces or causes more flowers to bloom in the environment, which you can then use to influence the role of the next gacha. Now, the two things that you can influence here, which drive monetization, are any of the timers, obviously. You can speed up any of the things you have to wait for, and the chance of the gacha roll, so specifying which species will appear when you attract something into your incubator. Okay, so the most important lesson, I think, from Flutter, and something that we did well, was that we extended the core experience and designed the game with events in mind from right from day one. And the reason it's important to extend the core is that it makes events not feel like an optional extra. This along with what I was talking about at the start, with events being limited just to that week, like involving content that you could not get at any other time, are two of the principal mistakes people make when trying to put events into their game. They try to bolt them on as like an afterthought or something. It's like, okay, I'll work on the game and then we'll get the event system sorted after launch or something. That's just like a sure recipe for failure, because if they feel like an optional extra, then there's not going to be that genuine pressure. So not only should you think about the event design and how it clicks in and really feels like part of the core game from day one, but how are you going to be able to keep up with shipping the events in the structure for the 2, 3, 4, however many years that your game goes for. Dragon Bale's been going for 5 years now. Pocket Frog's still going for 5 years. These types of simulation games have legs. They can go for a very long time. I mean, Neopets is still going, right? Like however many years later, RuneScape's still going. These games last forever, especially if they establish a really passionate fan base. As I said, the most important thing, though, is that they feel not like an optional extra that's just for the hard outs or just for the people that want to engage with that, but it's really an extension of the core game. So how did we do that in Flutter? Well, simply enough, the event content are sets of butterflies in what we call the Flutterpedia, so the collection that are only available for that time. So the game's about butterflies, so the events are about collecting butterflies. Okay, so the mechanics that we used to drive discovery of the butterflies and monetization within the event. Gacha is the mechanic that we chose for the butterfly discovery. This is a mechanic I'm sure many of you are well familiar with and has been used to great effect in the latest, I suppose, greatest, well, it's not really anymore because Pokemon Go is the latest, greatest thing. But before Pokemon Go was the latest, greatest thing, Clash Royale was the latest, greatest thing. And the Gacha is like their chest, the chest that you unlock there, where on a certain timer you get a random roll and you get to collect some cards. In Flutter, it's the same, except you get to collect an egg. So we use that to attract butterflies in this thing called the incubator right here. Sorry, we're going to have to watch the Clash Royale video again for a second. But the mechanic that we implemented in our Gacha roll for the incubator, sorry, there we go. Instead of making it totally random each time, is we enabled players to influence what would come out of the incubator or come out of that Gacha roll with these special flowers. Now, those special flowers can be collected through gameplay, right? They represent the location, or the region, the size, and the rarity of the species that you're trying to attract. So there's 3 different variables that they can influence there. So it's very possible to grind towards getting all the items that you need to attract the very specific species that you need. Then you can just use monetization to shortcut that process and just buy the flowers outright. The other mechanic that we used in a different event type is the capturing mechanic. So this is brought over from a mechanic they used in the card battle games or the dungeon boss games, where the player would earn a chest at the end of a quest. And that chest was sitting there, and you could either choose to buy a golden key to definitely unlock the chest, or try to unlock the chest and was like with this rusty key that they gave you for free, and there would be a chance that the rusty key would break if you tried to open it, or you could buy this special golden key and that would guarantee you'd get the thing you earned at the end. Now, this mechanic worked really, really well for monetizing, but when we thought about it for a casual audience, it's like that's a little bit rough. You know, like having to pay for something that you don't even know you're definitely going to need as inside it. So the way that we adjusted it is we developed this character called the Wisp Mother, and she's kind of the equivalent of the chest. She pops out these little wisps that you need to progress through the event. And the way that we adapted the mechanic is instead of it being a mystery what those items were going to be that came out of the chest, it's clear what the items are that come out, but there's a chance that you can't capture them, right? So you know exactly what color wisps have come out. You know that you need that particular color to progress through the event, but there's a certain chance that trying to catch it will race away. And so you can monetize instead on guaranteeing that you will definitely capture that particular one that you need. So there's a percentage that you'll be able to capture, a percentage chance that you'll be able to capture it for free, and then you can pay to monetize it. So you can pay to guarantee it. One of the most important things that we've done with events over the years is iterate on them and experiment. Try all sorts of different things, like how long should the event be? We've tried 10-day events, we've tried 18-day events. We settled in the end on 13-day events. The power of the rewards, what sort of functional benefit are the players going to get from the items that they are rewarded with for finishing the event. We made a big slip up in this one because we came up with a couple of different powers that we awarded to our players for some of our earlier events that then overpowered them for future events, which means that those players never monetized again. And I'll talk about that in a second as well, as isolating the effectiveness of those tools just to outside of events. The cadence is really important. And there's no golden rule for any of these things. Ultimately, it's all going to come down to the specifics of your game and the type of demographic you're targeting with your game. But this is an example of the cadence and event difficulty over time in Flutter. So this is showing the intensity of like the play session versus the time. So each point is a week. So what we do is we start off with an easy event, and what we call an easy event is just the basic rules. There's no special formulas in there or anything, and that's like the baseline 100%. What we call 100% difficulty. That lasts for 2 weeks. Then we follow that up with a sale. So what this does is that the pressure of the event comes off the peak because it gets more difficult towards the end because everyone feels the pressure of, oh crap, I've been slacking off the whole event, I need to pull my socks up and get this thing finished. And then right after the event concludes, we drop a sale or a free bonus into the game so you don't only have the pressure of the event drop off, but then you quickly follow in with something else to keep the players interested. But instead of it being another thing which is a attack on their time or like a pressure thing, you give them the bonus so they feel like not only is it less hard than the event, but then it's less hard than baseline. So then they get this like ebb and flow. And anybody that has studied game design is well familiar with this sort of ebb and flow. It's like a basic flow progression you get through any core game design. So this is a similar sort of thing we're doing, but just over the course of months instead of the course of, say, hours. We then follow up with that in a medium difficulty event, so that's like just making the tuning a little bit harder or introducing another point of complexity. We'll then follow up with our sort of quarterly update. I should say we update more frequently than quarterly, but we'll probably do like a big feature update about once a quarter. So that'll include, say, like a new character, a new thing to buy in the shop, some new things to decorate the environment. But the important point is something neat and fun. It feels like a gift to the players as opposed to asking for another challenge from them right off the event. And then we'll follow up with the hardest of the event types. And then after the event, it's just essentially the same thing as I said at the start. We come off the end of a really difficult event, and we give them a big free bonus weekend where they get a multiplier and a whole bunch of the different things. And then we start the whole process all over again. Okay, one thing that went quite well in the end for Flutter, but could have been an absolute disaster, was a way for our players to interact with the species from previous events. Now, it's the #1 request from all of our players has been forever that, especially recently, where new players come into the game, they're like, hey, there's 3 years of event content here that I can't see, I can't get to. And there's now, I think, been 42 or 43 events run in Flutter. So that's around 150 odd butterflies that most core players don't see. So we wanted to design a mechanic, some way for them to be able to see the species, but the challenge was doing that in a way which didn't detract from the scarcity and the value of the events when they were happening. So we built this feature called the visiting butterflies, special visitors, you can see here. And the way it works is that once every 3 days, a random species from all of the past event butterflies will visit your forest. They'll be there for an hour. While they're there, you can fly around with them, you can use their special ability, and if you want to, you can actually pay to capture it and add it to your collection. The pricing of that we set at double what it would cost normally to just pay outright for them in an event. So it was important there to make sure that it didn't feel like a valid way to go and pick up, like your unfinished event business, because and that was down to the pacing of how often it happened. So it's a very rare event in the game; it only happens once every 3 days. The chances of it being a specific one that you want, so it's randomly choosing one from a pool of hundreds, and then the price barrier as well, actually making it clearly not a cost-efficient way to do things. But what this ended up doing was providing value to both free and paying players. So for paying players, obviously, they were happy to pay for them. They got to collect all the old sets. But free players as well, they got to see the old butterflies. They also got to use the special ability. So there was actually us giving them like a free bonus. And so it was value for both sides, and both ended up enjoying it. The other side benefit from this, actually, which we didn't necessarily expect in the first place, was that it actually enhanced the mystique of the events, because the visitors were sold these like really super rare things that only happen, only visit very occasionally, and have these amazing powers and things. And then when an event starts, it's like, holy crap, we can get 5 of these things in the space of 2 weeks. So you're selling to the player in between events the value of those species still. The result was that we got a 1.5 times increase in our game's baseline revenue out of event, and so it had a really meaningful impact on the game's performance, and everyone loved the feature. Cool. Okay, so to look at Splash. After Flutter came out and it was a success, we decided that we were going to use that format to expand out a portfolio of these games inspired by nature, which had the common elements of being free to play, be event-driven, based on a real-life environment. So you can think of Splash as pretty much like Flutter with fish, but with a much improved core loop and much, much better event performance. So this is a graph showing the average Flutter event opt-out versus that of a Splash one. And there's 2 important things here. Both the peak at the end of the event is higher, but also the event right from the get-go performs much better, and we have much better sustained opt-out. So it's average revenue per daily active user for anybody that doesn't know that acronym. So why did that actually work? The key thing was having a better, clearer progression system. Now, this may not have been clear when I sort of glossed over it with Flutter, but there are two levels of completion, event completion within Flutter. You collect the 5 species in the event, and then you do what we call perfecting the 5 species in an event, which means that you need to collect and fuse together 5 of each species. And what that means is that the first tier of success within the event is, let's say, like only 20% of the overall work required to progress, to complete the event as a whole. So you need to do 5 times the work to go from completion to perfection. What this means is that a lot of players would just complete the event and just leave it at that. Because they're like, okay, cool, I'm happy with that. I've got 1 of each. I'll just save, the perfection thing for later on, or just, not be that bothered with it. So the way that we changed that in Splash is that we designed a new progression system where instead of all of the species being unlocked at the start, you would have to complete event actions to earn event XP, which then progressed a bar, the bar you see here, to then unlock the species and certain decorations and other event bonuses as you went. Now, the other bonus of having there's many bonuses to having this isolated system, but one of the other cool things is that it provided this single page where you could see how you were going, how you were progressing through the event and all the different things that you could earn. And this was reflected as well in like a picture. So you're actually painting a picture with the different components that you earn along the way. So everything that you do in the event, like feeding the species, collecting different corals and stuff, contributed XP to this bar. The central progress page would fill in as you discovered each of the species and each of the corals. And what this ultimately meant is that we were able to pace the unlocking of all that different content differently for each event and isolated from the main game. So all the XP and points and things you're earning are happening just in this nice little isolated system, as opposed to affecting any of the core game progression. The other cool thing with this progression bar is that it meant that both for players that are new to the game and players that were veterans, everyone's on a level playing field when they start together. So isolating all the XP out into a totally separate system and also a leaderboard, you can see on the right, really affected both the monetization and also the social hooks. So the leaderboard resets with every single event. You can see there the scores of our friends are based just on that leaderboard. So if I'm a brand new player that's just started this week and being brought in by my friend who's been playing the game for a year, then we both start in an even keel, and so we can have a meaningful competition over the course of that event. So I was explaining before in Flutter how, oh, sorry, yeah.
Just got a question.
Yeah.
On that progression, I've noticed that it appears, at least visually, that the grind from milestone to milestone is equal. A lot of games have a shorter grind at the beginning and then a longer one towards the end to create that curve.
Yeah. So it is actually like that. It's just lying. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Did you do any testing on that visual representation, or has it always been like that?
No, it's always been like that. I suppose like the tricky thing is because we've got iconographic representations of the different rewards along it, you'd end up having all the ones at the front like packed in, and then like the other ones out there. Yeah. So I think it's something we did consider at the time, and we were just like, it'll be fine. Yeah. And it was fine. So, yeah, cool. So yeah, with Flutter, the way that people monetize is they don't actually say that I specifically want to buy this butterfly. They have to buy the special flowers that they need to attract that particular species. Now, it worked kind of well with the fiction of the game, but it was a bit obtuse at the end. What we wanted to do in Splash is really shortcut that, so it was much, much clearer where the pressure points were, so to communicate to the player both what they needed, but also the opportunities for monetization. So this screen here is the species page within the Aquapedia, so the equivalent of the Flutterpedia in Splash. And instead of just telling you what flowers you need to go away and remember that you need to buy from the store and then collect together around the incubator and then get them in the right organization and then hit attract and things. It just straight up gives you the option to create the species that you're after right from that page. And it shows you which items that you need. So those items are the equivalent of flowers. And it gives you the option to buy those items right from that screen as well. So that was one of the better decisions we made in Splash, and actually simplifying that whole system, especially for a casual audience that's playing on mobile that don't have time to figure all that crazy stuff out. So it means that there were way fewer clicks to shortcut to where the player wanted to get to, and there was a much clearer value of spend, much clearer what items were needed to pursue the next event milestone. Cool, so next thing we stole from Japan is box gacha. This is, before I was saying, gacha is, for anybody, that doesn't know what gacha is or where it came from, the little plastic balls outside the supermarket where you pull the big handle and it pops out a ball and you open it up and it's got a mystery creature in it. So that's gacha, and then gacha was adapted from real life into the card battle games where much like Magic the Gathering or any trading card game, you get a mystery box of cards or the way that box gacha works, instead of it being totally random, you're actually shown, it's called a box here, and you can see what the contents of the box are. Instead of pulling from a totally random infinite source of different things that it could be, it pulls from the box. So we have this character, a snail that digs around in the sand, and she starts with a set of 9 in the box, and as she's pulling out each of these different items, what it's doing is it's reducing the possibility space that you're going to get the exact thing that you're actually looking for. So you look in the box and you can see, okay, cool, the item I'm after is definitely in there. So when you roll, there's a 1 in 9 chance at the start that you're going to get the item. So that's great. That provides transparency, which is particularly good for a casual audience who really do get frustrated with total randomness. And but what it also does as well is each roll, it's getting a higher and higher chance. Even if you miss the particular thing you want, there's a higher and higher chance that you will get the thing that you want the next time around. It also has this awesome feeling where if you get it on the second roll, you're just like, I totally beat the game. And then you can clear the box and refresh it and get a whole new one as well. And it's a fun little mini game as well. So clear possibility space, clear prizes, and we use this mechanic as well to introduce limited decorations within Splash, which also contributed a new, I think it was 1 cent or 2 cents to our baseline out of events. Hey.
Probabilities as they appear?
Yes. Well, no. We massage all of our probabilities in the favor of the player. They are true randomness, but this is like, okay, casual audiences hate randomness, right? Or just players in general just hate it. It's really, really hard to explain true randomness to any game player, let alone a casual game player. So it's very, very important that the edge cases with a true random number generator don't come up in these types of games, because they're going to, when you have like 100,000 DAU and you've got a real random number generator, you're going to have probably 1,000 people a day that have horrifically bad luck and have probably quit your game because of it. So instead what we do is that we do a real random number generator, but each time the player gets a bad roll, that then gives them a bonus, like a sort of multiplier to the effect of the roll. And so that ramps up and up and up and up until it gets to so it might be a 20% chance that it's going to be that legendary thing, and then it becomes 25, 30, 35, 40, until it gets to 100%, and then they definitely get something. And so if you can find some way to design that algorithm that you can just roll it out over all of your probability rolls in the game, then you can tweak like that over time as well, and then you don't have to build it specifically for each thing. Cool. Okay, very important thing with mobile monetization, or any monetization design, or any business design in general, if you're asking for money from somebody, is to sit in front of your game and really look at it through the eyes of a player. So play through an event and play through it without cheating, and then put yourself in the shoes of that player and look at your spending opportunities and be like, right, if I'm really into this game, is this $10 pack really going to be worth it if it gives this particular value out? Run that through in your mind and then buy it. You can probably cheat then to buy it, probably don't have to spend the money, but buy it and then use it, and then do try and understand whether it feels like a fair return on investment. This is one thing we've worked on a lot, but we really nailed it with the new event packs in Splash. So Splash had a redux of its shop about 6 months ago, and we added in these new limited time packs at the start of events, and they range from $2 up to I think $10 and $20. And what they do is they collect together a whole bunch of items that the player needs at that particular point in the event's progression. It puts a big discount on them, and the experience of going through and seeing it in the shop at just the right time and spending that amount of money, which is a significant discount from what it would cost to buy all those pieces individually, and then having that experience of all those, having all those items in your inventory, being able to use them for an hour of uninhibited gameplay and just blitz through the event, feels really, really good, and it drives significant not just sales for the packs at the start, but payer re-engagement. So ask yourself whether the packs and the items that you're offering to players are relevant to their goals at the time, and make sure the actual experience feels good. And even just add in little quirks and things like saying thank you to the player. I'm not sure if you saw it there, but at the end, every time someone buys something, we thank them and write them a little note and sign it off as the Runaway team and try and make ourselves feel human. But this is kind of tricky to do as well because the payer profiles are wildly different. People just want different things. Some people are going to absolutely wait for those packs and wait for the special deals, and they're not going to buy anything unless there's a dramatic discount on it. And other people are entirely illogical in the way that they spend. We finally added this thing in to Flutter that people have been asking for years, actually, to be able to just outright buy these flowers that they needed to progress through the Wisp event from the Wisp Mother I was showing you before. And the reason we didn't want to give them that option was because it would be stupidly expensive. We wanted them to engage with the mechanic, engage with the character, and we're like, okay, fine, we'll put it in, but we'll just make this prohibitively expensive, just stupid, no one would ever do it. So, and we released it, and we thought there was going to be this massive backlash to it, you price gouging assholes, and the feedback was universally positive, and our revenue shot up, and so we're just we give up, I don't know, and so we left it in there since. So, I mean, yeah, listen to your audience, see what they really want, and as often as possible, find a way to give them the options that they're looking for. Something new we added in from Splash onwards as well was ad monetization, and so we are primarily a business driven by IAP, but we also wanted to look at opportunities to monetize our free players. Now, one stigma that took us a while to shake about ad monetization is that it would negatively impact the experience for our paying players, both because maybe it would decrease the amount that they would spend if we were giving away too many rewards that they otherwise would have bought, or just because the ads would have gotten in the way of their experience, and they'd be like, I'm a paying player, I don't need to see video, stupid video ads. Both of those things couldn't have been further from the truth. The ads aren't, in fact, just for freeloaders. Crazily enough, there's a lot of paying players that really like to watch ads. Whether it's because they like the experience and we've got it linked into a cute little character, or whether it's because they get a few things for free and feel like they're now getting a better value out of the game. Ads, as long as you don't interrupt the gameplay experience with them, can be totally fine for your payers as well. This is the system that we've implemented for our video ads in Splash. So you talk to a little character and you can press play to watch the video. And then there's a little chance roll at the end of the video. You all watch a video for Gardenscapes. We've seen a million times. And then there's a chance that you're going to get a massive reward or a chance to get a little reward. You can keep on watching them again and again. And this works really, pretty well. We've still got a lot of optimization to do with the system, but it's added like a cent to our up down. We want to get it over 2. We're definitely nowhere near where we could be just yet. But the thing that we're adding in now is the concept of just-in-time rewards. And the reason we think our engagement rate, which is only about 15% for our video ads at the moment, which is way lower than it should be, is because he feels like a little side optional extra that you can go to if you have time. Instead, now we're integrating ads and ad bonuses into the flow of like the Wisp Mother and the event, normal event core loop that we have. And so hopefully we'll see an increase in engagement there. Hi.
Another question.
Yeah.
How do you manage the potential cannibalization that ads can incur?
Oh, and like in that the players will go over to another game instead and spend their time there, or?
No, I mean, if you've got it at a point where the player needs a particular resource to progress, they could watch an ad instead of purchasing that resource.
Sure.
The ad is, I'm assuming, a lower revenue per unit of currency than actually purchasing that currency.
Yeah, okay. So you've just got to balance it to make sure that the total amount of currency or items or whatever it is that you're rewarding through the ads just won't deter them from spending. As I was saying before, in some cases it can actually improve the paying performance because the player may be like, for example, they could spend 25 hard currency hurrying the game forward by 2 hours to get another whole roll on the gacha. But what they could do as well is then get an extra bonus, which is the equivalent of a fifth of that roll for free by watching a video ad. And then still that is like feels valuable because it feels like a really meaningful chunk. Like they get one of those wisps for free instead of 5. And it's not going to like dramatically overpower the player that gets those free things. And then you just limit it as well. Like you just limit the amount of high currency you give away by them per day. Yeah. So has anybody tried Facebook advertising? Anybody into paid user acquisition? No? Yep. Cool. Sweet. Okay. So it's not impossible. It's horrifically difficult, but and competitive. But we are having some limited success with it for acquiring new users. But one place we are seeing some really great results is in re-engagement marketing. And so that's instead of trying to get new users for your game, doing targeted advertisements to your existing users. So actually targeting down to your lapsed paying users as well, and using the Facebook channel to promote your new event and get those people back in the game. So this is what it looks like. We do a special post that shows off the event species. You target the audience that you know that are in the game that haven't played for a while, and you get apparently crazy return on investment from those campaigns. Now, we can't be sure that all of those players wouldn't have come back into the game anyway through another channel, but still, even if half of them would have come back and the other half wouldn't, 600% return on investment within a couple of weeks of running the ad is really, really good stuff. Okay, so another thing, speaking of re-engagement, that worked really well on Splash is that we put everything, instead of having a random amount of different timers for the caterpillars and different species, we put everything on a 2-hour loop. And what that did is it meant that the player was always sort of on the clock. They always realized that after two hours of real world time has gone by, that the game will be ready for them again. So there's not as much math or as much remembering they need to do about timers to know that there's going to be a valuable gameplay session waiting for them there after 2 hours. We took that idea further with linking into more real-world things in our new game, Starlight, where the phases of the moon change and there's different moths attached to different phases of the moon. Other games have done this as well, like there are seasonal dragons, for example, in Dragon Ball. So that leads on to so the last couple of points. with Starlight, the latest game we released 6 months ago, and how that came about. Starlight was the first self-published game that we did. We had a 3-year, very healthy, really awesome relationship with DNA, our publisher based out of San Francisco, but then decided that we wanted to take all the functions of publishing in-house so we could have the whole team working like holistically on the portfolio together and treating sort of customer support and quality assurance and things just as importantly as any art or code or things that went into the game. And so, again, this is kind of like a story of listening to the players, because we were asking ourselves what was the quickest run where we could get on the board as a self-publisher, as opposed to going and creating an entirely new game from scratch. Is there something that we could ship that used our existing audience? And so we asked our audience what they wanted, and the resounding #1 thing that they wanted for like 3.5 years is that they wanted moths. And so we gave them moths and just reskinned Flutter at night with a toad and an owl and moths and things, and it was a really, really great success. And we developed it in 4 months, got featured on both Google Play and the Apple App Store, had fantastic support there, and ended up doubling our company's revenue overnight. And so I think it was just a good example of how you can utilize your existing player base and tech and things, and also just listen to what their user base are asking for to drive like dramatic business success without necessarily having to develop something right from the ground up. And so with the release of Starlight, we have these 3 games now: Flutter, Starlight, and Splash. And so what we're starting to think about instead of lifetime value from an individual game is a lifetime value across the portfolio. So thinking of each of these games as little windows into one connected world. So the games are quite similar. It means that if you bring somebody into one game, then it's highly likely that they're going to like the other ones. But with the events going on in all 3 games, an issue that we've run into just recently is that a section of the player base are getting really burnt out on the number of events. Now, I showed you the cadence thing at the start where there's like that pressure and release. That's great. We still have that within each individual game, but the way that they overlap, it ends up being if you're into all 3 games, then it's just pressure. And if you're wanting to keep somebody on board these games for years, that's probably not a great way to do so if you have no point for them to sort of breathe. So it's a challenge that we're still struggling with, and we don't really know what the best solution is. But one thing we have done is built the database technology now that we have a single player account across all 3 games. So we're looking into ways that we could maybe, if a player completes one event, then they get a bonus that goes into the other game. So they actually get a running start on the other event, so it isn't quite as difficult. Cool. Okay, great. So in summary, events are great. Events can drive like significant lifetime value. They can double the revenue of your game if they're done right. But the most important thing is that they're designed right into the core of your game, right from day one. And you think about how you're going to continue to ship them for years to come. And that's it. Thank you. I think we've got some time for some questions. 5 minutes. Cool. Oh. So, yeah.
Cool. With your like the ad aspect of the game, and maybe there's another reason so that this is only new. What framework or system do you use for your ads in your game? Or do you create yourself?
Like ad mediation and delivery of ads for ad monetization, we use Fiverr. Yeah. Yeah. So there's 2 main mediation sort of competitors in the market. There's IronSource and Fiverr. They're both very similar systems. Both great companies, and you'll use those to mediate the likes of your ad providers like the Ad Colony, Unity Ads, AppLovin, and yeah, there's a few more as well. Cool. Sweet.
Did you say you did have player accounts across all 3 games?
Yes. Yeah.
How do you do that?
question for the technical team.
Like, I mean, is it an in-house account system? You're not using a third party?
No, yeah, we just rolled our own. Yeah.
Okay. So players can log in, or you just kind of assign an ID to the player when they log in anyway, and you can see if they're logged into another game.
That's right. So they're automatically assigned a player ID when they start the game. And so the player automatically starts the game as a guest unless they press the Facebook Connect button. But then it's all Facebook. So there's no other different login option. It's just a decision we made. It's like we didn't want to have to deal with, setting up accounts and retrieving passwords and all that garbage. And as soon as there's like maybe 5-10% of the audience that just don't want to connect with Facebook. And that does cause issues as well because people want to be able to save their game. But the upside is that it dramatically improves the login performance, and user experience. It gives us single sign-on because they have to sign on with Facebook across all 3 games, and if they're playing all 3 games, and it means that we automatically get the friends list. So they're logged into Facebook right from the start, so social is connected. So it's just like a balance.
And you just use the Facebook SDK.
Yeah. Cool. So.
I was interested in the retention rates. What would you perhaps perceive the retention rates if the events were not necessarily around the pay-to-play, but just to push retention? How effective do you think that would be to put into your title?
I think they do both. I think it's just as important for both because the events very much are tuned and positioned in a way that they can be completed for free, or at least you can get 80% of the way for them quite comfortably without paying through to the perfection. And so, most of our players, like all free-to-play games, still don't pay and they come back for the events quite happily. So, yeah.
You mentioned listening to the player base.
Yeah.
I was just wondering what are the primary channels that you have for that? Following players, or is it mostly just people who bother to communicate?
Facebook. Yeah. Facebook. We're very active on there. We've started doing weekly live streams using Facebook Live as well. So we'll actually just jump on the stream. We'll let people know like a day in advance when the stream's going to be, and we'll just have like a live Q&A with people as well, so they can just come on board and ask us anything they want. We really go out of our way to make ourselves visible because we're a small company and we don't have massive marketing dollars. And the more we can do, I think it's an age-old marketing saying that it's like way more expensive to get new users than it is to hold on to your existing ones, right? Or your customers. And so that, and then customer support, making ourselves really easily contactable. So we use a help system called HelpShift, and it's an in-app native help system, which means that someone can just press, we have help buttons scattered all through the entire game. So if somebody doesn't understand a screen, more likely than not, there's going to be a help button there that takes them straight to the FAQ for that's specific to that game screen. And then on that screen as well, they can contact support if they still don't understand. Okay.
What metric do you use for event difficulty?
Event, so what?
Event difficulty.
Oh, it's just a finger in the wind thing that I put together to illustrate the concept. But it's just like there's 3 different difficulties of event based on it's usually based on number of sessions and session time required to complete for free. And then this is, and so that ranges from, normal player can complete, the event for free by logging in 4 times a day of every day, through to regular player logs in 8 times a day and could maybe scrape through over the course of the event. So we do that. We model them out in spreadsheets, like, different player profiles, how many times they're logging in a day, what's their player session length, what's the likelihood that they're going to get the different things.
Kind of got 2 parts to the question, but with the custom sort of content for each event, is there ever sort of any issue with creating like this kind of content traceability, like constantly keep producing?
Oh, totally. Yeah, of course.
And then the second part of that was with the packs that you do. Do you ever feel like having packs, do you think that's a better approach, or not having discounted packs? Have you tried both? Yeah,
so at the start we didn't have any discounts or any any packs or anything, and my colleague and the product owner for Splash, Jeff, did a fantastic talk at the New Zealand Game Developers Conference, and unfortunately they didn't record those ones because it was really good, and I wish they had recorded it. But he tells the story of how they used packs, pretty much just packs and discounts, and some tweaks to the core mechanics to increase Splash's ARPDAU from 4 cents to 20 cents over the course of 6 months, working on that, iterating on those systems. So I think the moral of the story for us from our experience is packs for sure. Even just as from a payer's point of view, like it seems so logical when you go, because I mean, when you're monetizing one item at a time, not only is it like do you not get a clear sense of how much you've spent, but it's also just really cumbersome. You know, like the experience of going, okay, cool, I'm just going to pay $10 now, and I'm going to get all these things which are going to zip me through the event, and I don't have to think about any paying decisions for the next like hour or a few sessions or something. It just feels better. And it's what I was saying about the like, you know, going in and really playing through the player experience and understanding what it feels like to spend in your game is really important. If it feels good, then people are going to do it, and they're going to do it again. So the other thing about those improvements in Splash is they weren't just that effective the first time out of the gate. They were more effective the second time. So we had like more people come back, like, you know, pretty much everybody that spent the first time came back, and then more over that as well. So I think that's a good sign to show that that it's working if people aren't just monetizing on it once, but monetizing on the same thing again and again.
Question about the content that rises in the events. Do you push new clients like every month to make sure the content's in the client, or do you push it from the server when they link?
I'm not allowed to say.
Right.
No, there's a lot of server-side stuff. It's a kind of a fine line, really. Like we and everything eventually gets like piled into the client. But yeah, there's a lot of things being triggered by the server these days.
So do you do that every month, or do you not have a regular cadence in the client?
It's not strict. Like we have a pretty strict timeline around events, and we make sure we always hit that. And there are, you know, we can run most things from the server to run an event. But we generally try to ship an update a month as well, an actual client-side update. But on that note of automating events design and things, there's a fantastic talk up on the GDC Vault by the guys, and now I'm completely blank, Space Monkey Games, and their systems, and they show all the different toolkits that they make available to their designers. And so they can ship an event without even having to talk to a programmer. It's nuts. It takes like 2 hours for a designer to go and set when it's going to start, when it's going to end, all the variables. They can even chuck in like images into the like web like thing, and then it'll like change the sprites of the different units they're designing and things, and just go ship. It's really, really cool. Yeah. So, oh, one more.
Do you ever have any?
Sorry.
Do you have any issues with economy inflation or wallet size inflation giving discounts on currency?
We don't discount currency. We only give discounts on items.
Sales? Currency sales?
No, we don't have any sales on currency, just straight up, yeah. It's always packs and items. Yeah. Cool. Thanks heaps, guys. Cheers.